Welcome back. The Chinese government is lashing out at Canada after the House of Commons yesterday voted to declare China is committing genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims in its western Xinjiang region. MPs passed a motion saying China's persecution of these groups amounts to genocide in accordance with the definition set out in the 1948 UN Genocide Convention. Taha Ghayyur is a spokesperson for Justice for All Canada, an organization working to bring attention to the persecution of China's Uyghur population, and he joins me now. Taha, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Adrian, for having me on the show.
Taha, your reaction to yesterday's vote in the House of Commons, in which MPs passed a non-binding motion stating that China's persecution of the Uyghur population amounts to genocide?
Well, you know, we applaud this opposition motion on Uyghur genocide. It is a great milestone for the Uyghur Muslim community, Uyghur Canadians, and of course all the advocacy groups that have been advocating for this for the past 4 years. Although the Prime Minister and the Cabinet unfortunately abstained from this landmark motion, the fact that 226 MPs from across all parties gave a resounding yes and voted in favor of this sends a powerful message, a symbolic message to not only to the Canadian government, but also to other hesitant governments who have not taken action of any sort yet on the Uyghur genocide. And of course, it sends a very powerful message to the Chinese government.
You say it sends a very powerful message. What message does that vote by the 266 MPs send?
So, of course, considering that it is a non-binding motion and it is symbolic, it paves the way for us to, first of all, call out those who have not voted in favor of it. It paves the way for us to now start building and actually taking the right steps in the right direction in terms of calling out the Chinese government and specifically, of course, the Chinese Communist Party when it comes to its crimes against humanity that it has been carrying out for decades, actually, involving the Uyghur Uyghur Muslims. So what that means is now the Chinese government is going to be hopefully will realize that it no longer has that political impunity when it comes to continuing its systemic extermination of Uyghur population. It means that now we have something to stand on. A declaration is the first step, which basically acknowledges that there's something wrong. And if we don't even acknowledge it, unfortunately, we are not going to go anywhere with it. So this is really why, for us, as those who have been working in this field at Justice for All and others, it is a first step for us to start building stronger actions against the Chinese government, and that could lead to actually a lot of things that we can talk about.
The fact, though, that the Liberal cabinet decided to abstain en masse from this motion, from the vote, does that weaken the message that's sent from the Canadian Parliament?
Of course, it is deeply disappointing that our Prime Minister is not there and was not there, and the cabinet was not there. And yes, it may. However, considering that, of course, the rest of the leadership of the Liberal Party was there on its own to vote yes on this, I think does help us build a case that not only Canadians, but the Canadian Parliament is, by a majority of it, is in favor of calling it a genocide, and is now an opportunity for Canadians now to raise not only our voices against the genocide, ongoing genocide in Xinjiang province, but also now calling out the government for not having a political will and resolve to take action. So I think it helps. At this point, it is a good opportunity for Canadian activists and Canadians who are concerned about any atrocity crimes around the world, and specifically on this issue, for us to now call upon our government to have a stricter measures when it comes to involving sanctions on the perpetrators of those crimes, or calling for an immediate halting of the concentration camps, which are the largest concentration camps since Nazi Germany, involving at least 2 to 3 million Uyghur Muslims in those concentration camps, along with some Turkic people and Turkic Muslims as well.
Many Canadians are concerned about the impact that this vote might have on the two Michaels, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, who've been imprisoned in China now for some 2 years. Should they be concerned about what this means for them?
I mean, it is a natural and valid concern. I believe our government needs to have a very principled leadership and stance on these things. Though, as much as we care about our own citizens and their rights and their human rights, we need to be equally under the Genocide Convention. The obligation under the Genocide Convention, we need to be equally concerned about the human rights, international human rights commitment that we have to protect those individuals who are undergoing mass incarceration, forced labor, forced indoctrination, forced separation from their families, involving children and families. And this is an international obligation, and it is a humanitarian commitment that Canada has that it needs to ensure that it actually sticks to, along with its commitment to, of course, resolving and rescuing our two beloved Michaels who have been arbitrarily, of course, detained in China for so long.
Finally, should Canada pull out of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing?
I think Canada should call for relocation of the 2020 Olympics. I think this is the right thing to do. This is what this motion also calls for. This is what, of course, a lot of human rights organizations are calling for as well. Because if we don't do that, that basically gives China a pass to continue working on with all international with the international community without anyone calling it out for the genocidal crimes that it has been committing. This is what Canada should be calling for, and this is the right thing to do.
Taha Ghayyur, it's very good of you to join us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Lucy, yesterday's vote in the House of Commons, the overwhelming vote in which 266 MPs voted in favor of the motion condemning China, represents a victory of sorts for Taha Ghayyur and other Uyghur advocates who've been working very hard for many, many years to get this at the forefront of Canada's agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks for this, Adrian.